Hello, everybody. Welcome to In the Face of History. Today, we are going to be looking at the 2024 election, which is a couple of days away, and we are going to be viewing it through the eyes of history. We will be taking a look at the candidates themselves and how their candidacy portrays in this historic election. First of all, we're going to play a clip from ABC News with George Stephanopoulos from the 2016 election night, and there is one particular clip in that coverage that is pertinent to today, and so I'm going to play that for you and then comment on the historical aspects of each candidacy. Let's have a listen.
So if he's actually able to accomplish things that have not been able to be accomplished in a Washington stuck in gridlock, that may be the sort of thing that can bring in folks that have found his rhetoric to be quite hostile.
And Stephanie Cutter, despite a high approval rating, President Obama now joins the list of presidents in the modern era who couldn't elect their successor. A real day of reckoning for the Democrats.
Well, George, as you know, electing someone in the same party as a two-term president is very difficult.
All right. She makes a very good point here, and if I was to play the clip a little bit further, she would also make the point that there's only one time in a modern American history that this has occurred, and that was she didn't specify, but it is Ronald Reagan and George H.W. Bush, the 1988 election when Ronald Reagan secured the presidency for George H.W. Bush. We have several instances of the candidacy not being secured in the White House. And the first instance is, of course, the 2016 election when Barack Obama failed to secure the candidacy or the White House for Hillary Clinton. There's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, Barack Obama and the Affordable Care Act and the individual mandate, that was not popular at all. And that, plus the baggage that Hillary brought, the email server scandal, the Benghazi scandal, and some other scandals which I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. It's much to do about nothing. However, and the way that she handled it, calling a good majority of the population deplorables, that's a very good way to make sure your party doesn't get the White House's to insult the electorate. And for those reasons, and for the most part, with the exception of the 2016 election of Donald Trump, if you insult the electorate, you're most likely not going to win the White House. Donald Trump was the anomaly. That's number one. Number two, George Bush failed to secure the White House for John McCain. Again, part of that was John McCain's fault because he did not read the mood of the country correctly. Before that, we have Bill Clinton and Al Gore. Bill Clinton was popular, however, Al Gore, not so much. There was a computer game, Red Alert 2, that came out just a little bit before the 2000 election. And there's a line in that computer game that goes, "You don't want the vice president running the country, do you?" That sentiment was out there that you wanted to keep Al Gore away from the presidency as long as you could, and it was for that reason that Bill Clinton did not, when he had a surgery on his leg, it was local anesthesia instead of general anesthesia, because he did not want to transfer the powers of the presidency to Al Gore, and that says a lot when the president doesn't want you to have the power to run the country. That says a lot. But anyway, I digress. Prior to that, though, we did have Ronald Reagan, who secured the presidency for George H.W. Bush. The party in power generally will not be able to secure the presidency for its successor. It's American history. It just doesn't happen. It very rarely happens. Let's just put it that way. Then we go back even further in time. We have Lyndon B. Johnson, who was an unpopular president because of the Vietnam War. When Lyndon B. Johnson decided not to run for a second term, he essentially left the gate wide open for Hubert Humphreys to attempt to keep the White House. Unpopular president, unpopular vice president, tied together at the hip. Richard Nixon becomes president. We have, prior to that, we have Ike Eisenhower. His vice president was one Richard Milhouse Nixon. Ike was a popular president, and even he failed to secure the White House for his VP, Richard Nixon. I could go on further back, but the point is that there is a history that the party in power very rarely will be able to secure the White House for its heir apparent. Only twice in American history has that occurred. And, well, strike that. Only twice since the ratification of the 12th Amendment has it occurred. There was 3 times previously where the president secured the presidency for the vice president, and that was George Washington securing the presidency for John Adams securing the presidency for Thomas Jefferson. So I guess it's actually 2, but the first 3 presidents, the succession was already laid out. And it was not until Andrew Jackson or Stonewall Jackson secured the presidency for Martin Van Buren. And that was the first time since the ratification of the 12th Amendment where the president and vice president were put on 2 separate tickets for the Electoral College. But that was early 1800s, 1830, 1835, 1836, somewhere in that time frame as to when all of that happened. So you have over 100 years, almost 150 years. In fact, it was 150 years, where the vice president, the sitting vice president, was not elected president. There were instances, Richard Nixon comes to mind, where a vice president did, in fact, become president after some time away from the White House. And there's many instances that, due to the death and in Richard Nixon's case, resignation, where the VP came to power through assassination, natural death, or resignation. But it generally speaking, that sitting vice presidents do not become president, and that's a hill that Kamala Harris has to climb. And in the same vein of thought, ruling parties very rarely, the same two examples apply, where the president secured, or the ruling party secures the presidency for its heir apparent. So in that aspect, Kamala Harris has a very steep hill to climb, and history shows that generally the American populace, will not elect a sitting vice president. The only other time, well, let's just put it this way. Going back to Lyndon B. Johnson, there was no way that Hubert Humphreys was going to get elected president. You had an unpopular president who had an unpopular vice president. The two were tied at the hip, and there was just no way that Humphreys was going to, in those circumstances, there's no way that Humphreys was going to become president. In that aspect, we have a unpopular president, one whose physical health is in question, one whose policies, rightfully or wrongfully, is blamed on runaway inflation, rising crime, unsecured borders, wars in the Middle East, wars across the world. Some aspects of the American populace is blaming it on the current administration. Whether that's valid or not is irrelevant. It's what they believe. It's how they feel. And the current sitting vice president, when asked if they could change anything about the current administration, policies or actions, what would it be? The response was, I can't think of a single thing that I would change. When you have runaway inflation, you have high crime, you have unsecured borders, and you come up with an answer like that, history shows that that candidate, more often than not, will not be elected president. So you have that aspect that's against Kamala Harris. So she's already gotten 2 strikes against her unpopular president. She doesn't think that there's anything that she would do different. And then the top onto the fact that historically, ruling parties are unable to secure the presidency for their heir apparent. I'm not saying it's not going to happen, but historically, it is a near impossible task for Kamala Harris to become president. Now, let's take a look at Donald Trump's side. Only one time in history has someone been elected president and then defeated in the general election, and then the very next election run for president again and be elected. And that's the Grover Cleveland, Benjamin Harrison situation. Grover Cleveland was not a wildly popular president. The populace thought somebody could do better. They got Benjamin Harrison, it was even worse than, oh goodness gracious, Grover Cleveland. And so that's why Grover Cleveland is the only two-term non-consecutive two non-consecutive term president that we have of the United States. Now, immediately following that, William McKinley was elected and had Teddy Roosevelt as his vice president. McKinley passed away. Teddy Roosevelt rose to power, won re-election, and decided not to seek re-election. But after being out of office, he didn't like the way that Taft was leading the country, so he attempted to run for office. His party had moved on from him, so he ran as a progressive third party and failed to regain the White House. But Teddy Roosevelt wasn't a bad president. He was not an unpopular president, but at the same time, he wasn't a wildly popular president. So the American populace decided to move on from Theodore Roosevelt. So in this aspect, historically, when a president is defeated, he generally will, I say he because all the presidents have been male up to this point, he will generally fade into the background and be lost to the American populace. Grover Cleveland is the only exception to the rule, and now we have Donald Trump, who is the second president, or the second person to seek a non-consecutive term after being elected, losing an election, and then possibly getting reelected. And it's because the populace. Harrison was a bad president in the eyes of the populace, and so now so anyway, in the eyes of history, when you have a president who's voted out of office and tries to regain the presidency after one term, it's a small sample size, but 100% of the time it has occurred. And so in the eyes of history, not that I'm saying I'm agreeing with it, because I'm not sure I do, but in the eyes of history, Donald Trump has a very good chance, I won't say likely, but has a very good chance of regaining the White House based on historical patterns, historical trends of not electing sitting VPs as president, not allowing the party in power to try to name an heir apparent, particularly when the sitting president is unpopular for a variety of reasons. The VPs under those circumstances won't get elected, and history shows that. Now, is that going to be the case this election? We have no idea. The election hasn't happened. We will know in a couple of weeks, well, in about 8 days from the time I'm making this video, whether or not we will have a Grover Cleveland resurrection of a candidacy, or we are going to have the third vice president, the third sitting vice president, be elected president, and a variety of other factors that goes along with that. I'm not endorsing Kamala Harris. I am not endorsing Donald Trump. I've already voted. I've voted for a third-party candidate only because I'm disgusted with both candidates. With due respect to the former First Lady, Michelle Obama, a vote for a third candidate is a vote of disgust, and that is voicing our opinion. It's our opinion is saying that we are not thrilled with both the Republican Party and the Democrat Party, and therefore it's a protest vote. You say it harms the country, I say it helps the country, because it tends to, the more protest votes that there are. Sorry about that, I live on a major road. I don't have soundproof room, and I apologize for the heavy truck going by. But in the eyes of history, Kamala Harris likely, well, I shouldn't say likely, there's a good chance that she will not gain the presidency. She will not gain the presidency based on historic trends. Based on historic trends, as limited of size as it is, there is a chance that Donald Trump will regain the presidency, as unique as it is. And that is my take on Through the Eyes of History. I have done my best to keep it objective without putting in my personal feelings. And so I hope you enjoyed this little history lesson and my perspective through the eyes of history. Any questions, comments, leave them, any questions, thoughts, leave them in the comment section below. If you like this video, please hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up button, and if there's enough interest, I will continue this channel and Through the Eyes of History, looking at world events. Until then, take care, God bless you, and hope to make another video soon. Goodbye.